Good morning or afternoon, everybody. Thank you all for joining today's Lunch and Learn conversation for Forward Dallas. Today we'll be talking about what is Dallas, what is a place type. Just wanted to quickly introduce those who are on the call from the planning urban design side of things within the department. So my name is Lawrence Agu. I'm the chief planner and also the project manager for the Forward Dallas land use update, and also accompanied with me are two other of my staff and colleagues. They'll introduce themselves. So just wanted to thank everybody for joining. We will be opening up this for questions at the end of the presentation. So currently, if you're having issues with trying to get off mute, we'll be enabling that ability after the presentation. But I just want to thank you all for joining and looking forward to the conversation.
Hi everybody, my name is Patrick Blades. I'm going to be the presenter for this presentation, and I'll get to more about myself and the presentation here in a bit, but I just wanted to thank everybody for joining us, and we're going to get going here in about a minute or two. All right, it is 12:04, giving everybody a couple more minutes to join us. So we're going to go ahead and get started. Thank everyone for joining us for this Lunch and Learn about Forward Dallas and what is a place type. And yeah, okay, so before we really get started, down in the lower left-hand corner, there is captions available for both English and Spanish. We also have a Spanish interpreter. So want to make sure everyone is aware of that. Also, so again, as Lawrence said, we're going to have some Q&A here at the end of the presentation. Right now, we have everybody on mute so that we don't all hear each other collectively talking. But after that presentation, we ask that you raise your hand, and then we can unmute you, and we can have a good question and answer session where you guys provide us feedback, and hopefully we can answer some of those questions. So again, welcome everyone for joining us. Okay, so my name is Patrick Blades. I am a senior planner with the Planning and Urban Design Department. I work in neighborhood and long-range planning. I've been with the city 4 years. I previously was with Better Block, BC Workshop with other cities. I've had the ability to, or the fortunate ability to be able to go throughout the states talking about good places and good cities and what makes them up. I'm also a local product. I'm from here as much as anyone can be from here. My great-grandparents were Danish immigrants and had a small dairy farm where Love Field currently is. That picture over there is me on the right, and that's me because I built my own house here in Dallas with my own hands on nights and weekends, and that little cute peanut I am holding is my daughter because we lived in the house while we were doing it, me and my wife, and our newborn child because we were just gluttons for punishment. Okay, so I'm with the Planning and Urban Design Department. Our mission is to advance the livability, economic vibrancy, sustainability, and equity throughout the city of Dallas. But when people ask me, what do you do? What is planning? What is urban design? I always say it's about intentionality. that is what urban design, what good city planning is, about being intentional with how we want our city to develop, what we want streets to look like, what we want communities to feel like, what we want our city to be. It's about being intentional with those things. I like to give the example of a vacation. So when you take a vacation, you plan it, right? You get your tickets, for the plane, you book your hotel. If you're going to go see a concert or a game or a show, you get tickets to that. You might look at some restaurants, get some reviews, do some reservations. You're intentional about how you want to take your vacation, what you want to do for that. And that's what good city planning and urban design is. It's being intentional about what you want the city to be, what you want it to look like, what you want it to feel like. And that's what Forward Dallas is. It's urban planning 101. It's us as a city, and I mean that collectively. So people who live here, who work here, who own businesses here, it's all of us collectively coming together and saying, okay, how do we be intentional about what we want our city to look like in 5 years, in 10 years, in 20 years? What do we want it to feel like? What do we want the streets to look like and feel like? That's what Forward Dallas is. Now, officially, it is a citywide land use update to a plan that was done in 2006 that will guide the city about how we use both the public and private land here within the city. Again, it's about what we want to be, like that intentionality. That is what Forward Dallas is. Where are we in the process? So last year, we began the project with really doing a deep dive into the existing conditions of Dallas, what we have on the ground right now. Taking a look at economic data, demographic data, did a deep dive into what we are, and we have a existing conditions report. It's available on our website where you can spend as much time as you want taking a look at all of that research. Earlier this year, we began initial community engagement where we went out into the community and said, okay, what is important to you? What are the things that we can understand? What are the things that we need to address? What are the issues that are coming up, right? Now where we're at is we're at the land use visioning part, right? We're at that point where we need to be intentional about how we are crafting policy for a city, because that's how we alter the future of our city, right? We know what we are right now. We've gotten input about the issues that the community and individuals are facing. How do we be intentional about how we want to craft our land use policy, how we want to plan our city, right? We're doing that just like you're planning that vacation, right? That's the point that we are now. What do we want to change? What do we want to preserve? What do we want to change about a community? Moving forward from this point, we're going to go into scenario development where we take that input about what we want to keep, what we want to change, what we want to grow, and we create different scenarios. Or we have a consultant that's going to come in and do some scenario planning where they say, okay, this is what happens if you don't change anything in this community. This is what happens if you make these changes. And then based upon those developments, we go back into the community and we say, this is what we got. Here are those decisions to make about the future of our city. With that, that's our plan, right? Then intentional things about what we want to change about our city and what we want to preserve about our city. That becomes our Forward Dallas comprehensive plan. So, I mentioned that there was a plan done in 2006. This plan is going to be different from the one that was previous in a couple of ways. The first is, urban planning, as I said, is intentional. Some of that intentionality in the past was racist and has created a lot of racial inequities in how our city has developed. And I don't say that as something to check off a box or to fly in here and say that. Again, I talked to my great grandparents. I have a granddad that was born in a back room on Pine Street over there in South Dallas. So I don't come at that point lightly. The second point where our plan is a little bit different from previous efforts is the previous plan didn't do a great job of addressing kind of grassroots planning efforts. Ones that were led by communities or neighborhoods or business associations. It kind of left some of that out. And so this update of Forward Dallas is going to bring that into the planning process. And I also don't come at that point lightly as being the former president of my neighborhood association. And the third one, the previous plan had some really good things and was very aspirational. And it said, this is what we want the future of Dallas to be. We said, okay, great. How do we get there? Well, it didn't really give us those implementation steps to get there. It just had that great vision. And so here what we want to do is not only have that vision, but also give the plan teeth, give it those steps so we can achieve that vision. But why should this be important to me if I don't, if I'm not working in the planning department for the city of Dallas? Well, hopefully I've gone over some of those ideas about why it's important to you, because again, this is shaping the future of your street, shaping the future of your community, of your neighborhood, shaping the future of the city. Right? As community members, this is your opportunity to really have that input to say, look, I don't like the direction that something is going, or I really like the direction that this is going. I really like this type of place over here. I don't like this type of place. I want these types of things to be in my future, either on my street or down the street from me or in my community, or things that I don't want there. This is your opportunity to have a lot of that engagement and a lot of those conversations. For developers who want to build X, Y, and Z, this is the opportunity for the city to say, yes, the community said they want X over there and they want Y over there, but they don't want Z at all. So it gives that vision and that guidance for developers for what they should be building and where they should be building it. It also informs city staff. It helps me. There are a number of places in Dallas that I feel confident that I know things about, but there are so many places in Dallas that I do not know a whole lot about. And that's where this process informs city staff about those different types of places and what the future for those places should look like. And lastly, it helps inform our elected and appointed officials. Like what should they be advocating for? What do the members of their community really want? And so it really, again, why this should be important, because again, this affects the future of your street, your neighborhood, your community, and your city. So I wanted to briefly touch on some of the themes that from the initial community engagement that I talked about. When we went out there, we had some concern, our citizens and residents and community members talked about some concerns about housing quality, housing affordability, the quality of life, mobility, connectivity, the way our communities look, like the design of them, having a complete neighborhood, issues about environmental quality and climate change and environmental justice. All of those themes were brought up in the initial community engagement, and all of those themes are going to go into our land use policy and our land use visioning. So what is land use? It's kind of a boring term, but it just refers to what is happening on that property. Is it a house? Is it an office? Is it a restaurant? Is it being used as a store? Is it kind of a couple of things? There's some stores on the bottom floor, but then as you get up, there's a hotel, and then there's some stuff above it. How those different types of land uses, how those properties are being used, are those different types of land uses. And we know as planners, and really as community members, because everybody knows this really at some level, that some types of land uses go very well together. Other types of land uses don't go great together. And sometimes when you have those land uses either clustering together or abutting each other, that's what causes some of those issues that I mentioned about in some of those community themes. And when we talk about land use, we have two different terms when it comes to land use. And one is the existing land use. What is there on the ground right now? What is happening? And then we have future land use, what we want that to be, right? That intentionality about something that we may want to change. And it may be there's a house there and we want that house to be there in the future. We don't want anything to change about it. It may be that it is a auto parts yard and we don't want it to be that in the future. We want to change what that land use is. And this process is one of the ways in which we can inform those changes, inform what are the things that we want to have existing and future be the same, or what we want the existing and the future to go ahead and be different. Zoning. I always enjoy giving a presentation about urban planning where I don't bring up zoning for the first 10 or 15 minutes, because people who always say, well, yes, sometimes zoning is urban planning, and zoning is not urban planning. Zoning is a tool to achieve certain outcomes for urban planning, right? There are rules and regulations. That's what zoning is. For different types of land uses, right? The term zoning is the basic idea that you have zones for different types of land uses, right? You have a zone for residential housing, you have a zone for office, you have a zone for things that are mixed together, you have a zone for industrial, right? That's what zoning is. They're just rules for how property are developed, what those properties can be used for, and then sometimes regulations about how they look. So this can be used for a house, but it can't be 100 feet tall because that's not the community design of that neighborhood. So this is a presentation about what a place type is, right? And I've talked now for almost 10, 15 minutes and we haven't really brought that up. So when we talk about a place, right, there are different components that make up a place, right? It's the people that are there, it's where it actually is, what's happening, and then the access to it. Like those are the aspects that make up a place, right? And there are different types of places in the city, right? Again, different people are in different locations doing different types of things, and you can get to those in different types of ways. So before, though, I talk about a place type, I want to talk about pizza because it's a lunch and learn, right? So pizza, when you go into a pizza joint, there's a menu board, right? Different types of pizza, right? There's a cheese pizza and a pepperoni pizza. There's the supreme pizza and meat lovers and veggie lovers, the Hawaiian pizza. There are different types of pizzas, right? And those different pizzas have different ingredients, right? And some pizzas, like the pepperoni pizza, has everything that a meat lover's pizza would have, right? The dough, the sauce, the cheese, and the pepperoni. But the meat lover's pizza has other things that are on that pizza, right? And when you order some pizzas, right, there are things that you expect to get on that pizza and things that you don't expect. When you order the Hawaiian pizza, you don't want that to come with mushrooms and onions and peppers, right? When you order the veggie pizza, you don't want to have Italian sausage on it. Those things don't go into that pizza. They're, when you put those different toppings on that pizza, they become different types of pizza. And lastly, when I'm talking about different types of pizza and different types of places, a pepperoni pizza from Pizza Hut tastes a certain way, looks a certain way. It's a little different from the pepperoni pizza from Domino's or from Little Caesars or from your favorite joint. But there's still pepperoni pizzas at the heart. There's personal preferences, but there's still pretty much similar types of pizza. And so when we talk about different place types, I always like to keep in mind that there are different types of pizza, just like there are different types of places. And we all have sometimes different interpretations, but again, the menu board at most pizza places looks pretty much the same, just with some local variations. So before we get into some more details about place types, I'm going to go over some examples. Downtown, what downtown is, what it feels like to walk through downtown, what is going on in downtown is a certain type of place. Lower Greenville Avenue, again, that's a different type of place. When you walk through there, you feel different. What's going on in Lower Greenville versus what's going on in downtown, they're different. They're different types of places, just like different types of pizza, right? This is Grand Avenue coming out of South Dallas into East Dallas, right? This type of place feels different than Medical City, right? They are pretty different types of places. Sometimes, this is a house, I believe up in Lake Highlands, went over here in Bishop Art, or sorry, I guess it's more South Oak Cliff. They are a little different, but also they're pretty same, right? Like this doesn't feel a whole lot different than this, but it feels a whole lot different from that. Like those are drastically different types of places. And sometimes what you're doing at that place, right, dining and shopping, can be the same, but the scale and scope are different. Right? No one is going to confuse North Park Mall with Bishop Arts. When you walk through those places, they feel different because they are different. They're different types of places. And essentially that's a simple idea of what a place type is, right? It's what is happening in that place type and what it looks like in that place type, that they are different than other areas of Dallas. And some areas are very similar, only with small variations. Because our definition of a place type talks about a vision of a community, right? Where there are different, it's a particular mix of land uses and design and density where they feel and they look pretty similar. Where we're at in this process, the city of Dallas, is we're putting together a menu board, right? There are different types of places here within the city of Dallas, right? We're still working on it, but as we move forward, we're going to be labeling, with the public's help, different areas of Dallas as certain types of places, right? here we have the example of our place type map. And again, as we're working through it, there's different types of land uses, different mixtures of what's happening there and the density and how they feel. The one here on the far left, that's a regional open space, right? That's the most simple place type because there's not as much going on there as the one on the far right, which is downtown and urban core. And then it's not entirely linear from one side to the other, but as you move from left over there, the open space, to right, you go through more of a rural residential, which is the southwest and far southwest and far southeast areas of Dallas. Then you get into more of a suburban residential, right? That's that third one there from the left, where it's a lot of single family homes, pretty much a lot of single family homes. If it's an older neighborhood, there might be some duplexes or some granny apartments in there. There's some commercial, but it's usually either at hard corners or linear. There's some parks, some institutional, but at its heart, it's a single family community and neighborhood. As you get more intense, right, you get to more of this urban residential, where you get more townhomes or 2 or 3 story apartment buildings mixed in with those single family homes. And then you get even more intense to kind of this mixed residential where you don't have as many single family homes. Now it's apartment buildings, it's townhomes. There's more retail and restaurants there because there's just more housing there. So there's more wallets and purses there. And then we get more into this one here in the middle, which is more of a commercial one, where there's residential there, but it's more now heavily leaned to a commercial aspect. And just like residential, there's an intensity there, right? Where it goes from, 2 to 3 stories to 4 to 5 stories, where, it goes from a certain type of place to another type of place. Then we kind of dip on over and we have 2 industrial place types. One is more of an industrial hub, like it's a core industrial area. The other one is more of an industrial flex or innovation space where it's less a gigantic warehouse and more of, it's got some storage and some warehouses there, but there's also, some showrooms that are in there. There's probably some retail that are in there. There's some restaurants that are going around there. It's more of a not solidly industrial. And then the last 3, that's their most intense areas. Those are heavy commercial areas where it's not just apartments and offices, but now it's apartments and offices with their view, right? Those are also where the corporate campuses are around and where more of our urban core place types are. These are the names for those place types. Again, regional, rural, residential, suburban residential, mixed residential, all the way up into that urban core. And again, we're working through those. Part of this engagement process and the conversations that we're having is fine-tuning that menu board, right? Understanding, did we get everything? Did we miss something? Are we not talking about something in a particular way where we need to adjust the definitions or add a new, there is a particular place type, a particular pizza that everybody's ordering off menu that we really just need to be putting on that menu. But understanding these place types is going to be really important because how the city is going to use them with this plan. Here on screen, we have an example of a suburban neighborhood place type. I believe this is in North Dallas. It's a suburban neighborhood. Again, it's a lot of single family residential. Right? When we look at the land uses, right, that it's pretty much all single family residential. The blue in there, that's the industrial or institutional, right? So churches and schools that usually are in suburban neighborhoods. The green, those are parks, both the linear trails and then an actual park. And then that kind of orange area, that's single family attached housing, duplexes, right? Where it's sprinkled in, it's a little bit there, but again, the heart of that suburban residential community is single family residential. And as we put together these place types, right, as we say this community is a suburban residential neighborhood, that informs the future of that community, as in you can't go in, buy a whole block of it and decide to go ahead and build huge apartments there because that's not what the community wants there. That's not what the type of place is. The type of place is that's suburban residential. Right. This is our matrix, excuse me. And there's a lot going on here, but basically this again informs, we've got those different types of places there on the left and different types of land uses, the things that are happening in those places up there at the top. And different types of places are going to have different things as the main thing that's going on, like this, the suburban residential. Yeah, that should be single family residential. Right? Should it have some small retail in certain sections, yeah, that could be a thing that can happen there, right? You go down to the urban core, and yeah, that's much more. It's apartments and condos, mixed-use buildings, it's hotels, it's um, parks. Parks are in all of them, but also office and really economic generation and job generation, as well as more dense housing options. Um, and so, with that, I would be happy to open up the floor to any questions, either questions you have about the process, questions you have about place types, or feedback to give us about things that we may need to be thinking about.
I have a comment, if we're allowed to just jump right in.
Yeah, if you can, again, use the hand raising to say,
Oh, sure.
yep, so that way our staff can go ahead and dive through that. I'm going to go ahead and ask if Lawrence or someone else wants to call out who has the question, because I don't believe I can
Is that you,
see.
Tatiana? Are you the one that went off mute?
It is
Okay,
me. Hello.
perfect. All right, floor is yours.
So my name is Tatiana Farrow. I live in West Dallas, and I'm also the director for District 6 on the Dallas Housing Finance Corporation Board. And I joined the call because there have been numerous comments by my neighbors about the development that's going on in our neighborhood. And it's not clear for any of us how we can get the city's attention on the effects of the upzoning and what's working and what's not working. So I decided to join this call and maybe start the conversation that way. So, for example, one of the issues is the duplexes that are being built in our area. It was previously R5 and now we're TH3. The environmental decimation of the trees in the area is heating up the neighborhood in the summer, and it causes everybody to have higher electric bills, and it just makes it really unpleasant to be outside. So when we're talking about place types, right, we expected to get duplexes that fit within the neighborhood, but what we got was something very urban that definitely changed the feel of the neighborhood. And I'm not sure where that conversation fits in all of these meetings.
Yeah, so first of all, thank you for joining. Um, so with West Dallas, I think that the beginning of that conversation is always to understand that there was intentionality with how West Dallas was originally developed, and a lot of that um, was racist. That's why there's a lot of industrial that's over there in that community. Um, and to your point about the single family homes maturating into more intense structures, um, it would be about talking through what you want your community to look like and feel like. What is that place type that you want it to be, on a street level, on a neighborhood level, and on a community level. So if you say, this is beginning to feel like a different type of place, and I don't like the fact that it's feeling like a different type of place, that's the conversation to have with city staff when we are in West Dallas, which I believe we have a community meeting that's going to be set up for West Dallas or the Singleton corridor, uh, to have those conversations, to understand where we need to say this type of place is a suburban residential type of place. It's this type of place, this type of pizza. We don't want other stuff added to it. But also just understanding that where you want to have that preservation occur, where you want to keep those types of places, and where there might be other areas that you understand that place type is changing, and to have that understanding and that conversation, and Tatiana, does that at least either help you understand the question or how to have that conversation?
Yes, what I'm hearing is you suggest that we bring that up with city staff at the next community meeting happening in West Dallas.
Yes, ma'am. So
Okay.
part of that is, I'd love to have, I think there's 50 people on this phone call. I'd love to have 50 conversations with everybody about the areas that they're involved in or they have concerns in. Uh, this call, I can't have that, just can't. So when we were out in those communities and we were saying, okay, here is your map, right? This is your community. This is your neighborhood. Tell me what types of places these, should go in these buckets. Our consultant and city staff, will lay out suggestions, but they are suggestions to start the conversation with you, where we say, this is what La Bajada, we think this is going to be a, a suburban residential place type. Some places along Commerce, they're not going to be suburban residential place types. Like the development that's happened there has already happened. Like those are going to be more of a mixed residential place type. And where are those boundaries between those different types of places so that we can provide that vision for elected and appointed officials like yourself to say, don't approve this, don't go move forward with this, because the communities have those conversations and they've said, you can go up to here, but can't go north of there or south or west or whatever it's going to be.
Perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm going to read another question from Matthew McLeod. Can you have too much of one land use type or use in an area?
It would be a little bit dependent upon what type of place that you're talking about. You don't want to cluster together all of a particular type of land use in one area of the city. You do, though, sometimes want to have concentrations of certain types of land uses, right? So there are concentrations of single-family land uses in certain place types in certain areas of Dallas where it's not necessarily a bad thing. Now, you want to have a diversity of different types of land uses in so much that it can't get stale sometimes, as people in the planning profession talk about, where it doesn't feel like anything else because it's just too much of something. And to the other side of the land use equation, sometimes having a lot of industrial only in one area is not always a great idea, because sometimes the adverse effects of all of that. But I guess the short answer to your question is it's a very nuanced and a little bit complicated question, I guess, which I don't think does a great job of answering that, but I'd love to follow up with you about it.
All right, and we have Harry Swanson with his hand raised. Go ahead and go off mute and ask your question.
Yes, in your plate, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes, sir.
Okay. In your place types, you don't have any manufactured housing. The only housing that we're probably the majority of the people that are going to get off renting is manufactured housing. So we should be developing very sustainable, attractive, because manufactured housing has such a negative connotation. I don't see anything about manufactured housing in this plan.
Harry, thank you for your question. So when he talks about manufactured housing, he's talking about housing that's not stick built, as they say. So it's housing that's made off-site and brought onto the property. Sometimes it's more institutional or manufactured. But I think it's not that type of housing is not a place type, but because it's a type of land use. So it's whether it's single family manufactured housing or whether it's several of them put together, that would be more of a multifamily land use or a single family land use would then fit into a type of place. So it may be a suburban residential type of place. It may be more of a mixed residential type of place, but that type of manufactured or institutional housing would be something that can be looked at through the different types of land uses, which ForwardDallas, one of the things that it's working on as well is using or updating our development code, right? The zoning, right? The laws that we have. And I think that's one of the things that they're looking into is, manufacturing has, as you noted, that connotation, and how can we understand its evolution and as manufactured housing as a proponent of a possibility for affordable housing.
So are you going to put it in the plan? You know, I don't see anything. When I go to all these meetings, no one ever talks about manufactured housing. It has such a negative connotation. And there's, you know, you can build very attractive facilities. And I think in the plan, there ought to be some research how you can sustainable, attractive, so people accept this. It's the only house, you know, it's per square foot, it's half the price of any house that you can build, stick build. So I think the plan ought to be having something, a good portion of it about manufactured housing, because that's the housing of the future for most people to get off renting.
Yeah, and we've talked about how these different types of places may have certain aspects to them. You know, where it's you know, we're talking about this type of place, and then we have a section here that talks about the possibilities within that place type to understand, as you said, you know, manufactured housing may be more of a part of the suburban residential place type with certain guidelines of how that can be more of a sustainable tool for housing affordability. So yes, we can definitely take a look at that.
Thank you.
Patrick, would you mind switching back to the land use matrix? I think some people wanted to see that for reference.
Yep.
And we can also go back to the land use kind of graphic as well. I think just piggybacking on that last question, you know, this matrix, you know, we're showing the list of place types on one column, and on the top, those are the general supporting land uses up top. So in the city of Dallas, there's actually a plethora of land uses, and like Patrick mentioned, for manufactured housing, that falls within, or that can fall within single family or multifamily as well. So that we're not getting rid of any land uses in this particular project. We're basically trying to figure out which groupings of those land use fall within a place type, and thinking about that strategy. When we go into the manufactured housing piece, like we're going to be doing in the future, that's going to be talking about, you know, more about the zoning and all those more nuanced pieces. But I think Patrick just mentioned that that's still part of what we're looking at, part of the suite and part of the package, and we're not getting rid of that at this juncture. And then up next, we'll go down the list. Raul Reyes has his hand raised. Go ahead and go off mute and answer your question.
Yes. First of all, thank you for the presentation, Patrick. Good to see you on the screen. Couple comments and I guess one question. First of all, I've seen some of these presentations and what the intent is with ForwardDallas, and one thing that we keep asking here in the neighborhood, I'm from West Dallas, is that how is this plan going to help correct some of that racist history that we have, right? Especially with the environmental racism that our community has experienced, where we nearly have half of West Dallas is zoned for industrial uses, and obviously it's also a community that's being gentrified. So there's density that is coming into the area. And as a community, you know, we are taking the proactive steps of developing our own area plan. We've been dealing with PUD and the city staff on that. So we do have a meeting coming up on the 17th, just for those that are from West Dallas are on the call, at 723 Forward Avenue. And then we also requested for PUD to come out on December the 6th and do a presentation for us in West Dallas. So thank you to the staff for making that and for supporting our work. But it goes back to the intentionality of this plan and all these conversations that we're having. I mean, I've learned a lot in the last several years in dealing with these issues as my community is being gentrified, and I appreciate it, all these graphics and stuff. But it goes back to the intent, because that's what actually shapes policy, and that's the part that I'm not hearing in these conversations. And the last thing I want to do is to always have to be begging whether it's my elected official or city staff, what we've been yelling about for the last several years. So if there's a way that the language here, and it even goes back to what the gentleman just discussed, what the type of structure or the make of it, if the language is not in the policy or in the discussions of it, then again, and again, Patrick, no insult to you, brother, because I know where you come from. Then it's just a bunch of, it's just a nice deck slide. So I just hope that those are the conversations that you guys are having internally, with your with your ranks and your bosses, to make sure that when communities like ours present our own plans, that there is no issue that why is it that we can't, do the work for you guys. I'm gonna say that, do the work, and then be able to blend that into what's already in discussion as a city. So it's not really a question; it's more just a comment.
Well, and no, and again, thank you so much. I'm going to go back to a couple of slides. Right, so back to this one about what this plan is hoping to do versus what the other ones had. Again, to your point, yes, a lot of, there's a lot of intentionality in West Dallas that was very racist that has created that. Previous plans have lacked that engagement with your community and other communities when you are doing those localized efforts. And then sometimes, there isn't the teeth there to say, okay, yes, we have these conversations, but it wasn't, where are the implementations, where are the teeth? And right now, the city has no future land use map for the city, right? So right now, we have existing land uses that are happening in West Dallas. If someone wants to come in and say, I want to rezone this, there's nothing that we have that says, no, the community says they don't want that, right? So you guys then have to mobilize every time a new zoning case comes up to say, no, we don't want this, right? This is the process, and I believe I'm going to be at those meetings on the 6th and I think the 17th, where we're sitting down with you, the members of the community, and we're saying, okay, what is your future land use? Like, let's look at this map. Let's look at the different, what do you want for this place type? What do you want for this space type? Draw these on this map so that we have that, so that we can put that in the code, so that when a developer says, I want to do X, Y, and Z, your elected officials can say, well, no, the plan says they don't want that. Or the plan says that we know that we have industrial uses out there and that they are causing a lot of environmental issues. We need to do away with those. Or future land use map doesn't have that as that place type for that area. And I think that is my hope for what ForwardDallas is going to do. And this comprehensive plan is that it addresses some of those racial inequities that are there. It leans heavily on the community to say, we need your input. And then it gives that input teeth, so that it's not just an exercise and a nice slide deck.
So I'm going to respond to the questions I see on chat, and those who have their hand raised, I'm going to identify you all. So Joyce Martin has your hand raised. You can go off mute.
Patrick, thank you so much for this lunch and learn. It really is very eye-opening. But one of the things I haven't heard you discuss is the what Dallas is going to do about housing for all of the many folks who are moving to Dallas. Right now, when folks move to Dallas or to the Dallas area, they may be going to Frisco or Allen or Mansfield. Is that okay with Dallas? When you're making your plans, are you considering what do we need to do to increase housing availability in Dallas?
Thank you for your question, Joyce. The short answer is yes. Like, we know we need more housing in Dallas, and we know we need more housing types in Dallas, right? The cost of housing all around Dallas has gone way up. And, to your point, we have a lot of in-migration that's coming to Dallas, Fort Worth, but a lot of that is going to the to suburban communities as well. So we know we need more housing, so that's part of what Forward Dallas wants to understand is how can we build more housing? What place types can accommodate more housing, right? So that we can have more affordable places to live here in Dallas, and that we can create other types of places that are attractive to people who move here. The little girl that that I was holding in that picture in the very beginning, she is 8 years old, and when I talked to some of the parents at her school, some of them came and moved to suburban communities and then found things they liked in Dallas and came here. And part of that is called placemaking, right? Where we're making creative placemaking, where we're making places that people like to go to, and that they like to take Instagram pictures and like to hang out with. So I guess, yes, we are thinking about it both from we need more housing and where can that housing go? And we need to have places that people like to hang out with and go to and be at, so that our city can attract some of those people who are coming to the Dallas-Fort Worth area.
All right, so we have Ed Zara next.
Hello. I wanted to make a comment about the styles of some of the homes that the previous speaker said that's happening in their neighborhood in West Dallas. Unless you're a conservation district or a historic district that has style protections, there is no protection in the city of Dallas for any neighborhood because the city of Dallas development plan is based on density, and they do not regulate the style a developer can build on your lot. That's why you're seeing these structures being built that don't fit in your vintage neighborhood, just like over in East Dallas where I live in Lakewood. I mean, conservation district takes minimum of 3 years. Elm Thicket just went through theirs getting downzoned because of one of the city council members after 7 years. So unless those protections are in place, there's no board or rule telling a developer he or she can't build a style of home on the lot they buy. And you all need to realize too, the affordable housing crisis is being caused by the cost of dirt. As that cost of dirt gets closer to $300-400 a square foot, it's tough to pencil anything that's considered affordable. So I just want to bring up those points. Thank you.
Yep, and thank you. In our conversations, so first of all, you are correct. The city of Dallas has no design standard for single-family housing. Like you go to some suburban communities and they talk about the percentage of bricks or X, Y, and Z. Outside of conservation districts or historic districts, in some PDs, those design requirements aren't part of it. And what we've had some conversations about is what's happening in different types of those communities, where we're seeing a lot of homes that are being torn down and replaced. And usually what's happening in those areas is those are older communities, streetcar suburbs. They're communities that were designed in the 20s, 30s, and 40s and into the 50s with smaller homes. Those are now being removed and replaced with much larger structures. It's not so much happening in the areas of Dallas that were built in the 70s and 80s, because those homes they're wider, they're a little bit bigger, and just that the makeup of them is different. So we've definitely are having some of those conversations if there are some of those needs to put some of those design requirements for different types of communities. But it's just an ongoing conversation.
Let me bring up one more point to your comment. What's happening in these older neighborhoods is when these new structures were built without any type of style or size restrictions, you lose the scale of the neighborhood. That's the most important part. When these neighborhoods were designed, they're built into a scale. When you have an original 1,200 square foot home next to a 3,000 square foot zero lot line new build, the scale of the neighborhood is gone. You've lost it. I've seen it. I've been there in old East Dallas in the 70s. I know all this. That's the part that's missing, is the scale goes away and you lose the cohesiveness of your neighborhood. And the city of Dallas has a density mindset in the development code, shorter setbacks, more density on the lot. And that's what you're seeing in a lot of these neighborhoods, West Dallas, South Dallas, East Dallas, even some in North Dallas. It's the Wild West when it comes to building new builds. And I'm nothing against new builds, they have their purpose, but when you integrate them in existing neighborhoods, those residents have rights. The vintage residents who've been there for 40, 50, 60 years, they have as many rights as the people who are buying and putting up new builds. But that's what we're facing in Dallas. We got to be real careful how this all plays out. Thank you.
Yeah, totally understand it. My neighbor to the right of me has a 900 square foot home they bought for $60,000 in '99. 3 houses down, there is a 3,800 square foot new construction that's more than $1 million. I totally understand that perspective, and it's something that we're looking at with that suburban residential pre-ward place type. What type of recommendations we need for those communities?
All right, so we have 3 more hand raised, and that'll
Thank you.
probably thank you so much. Apologies. And that'll probably be the end of our questions. But again, we'll provide our contact information after this for those who want to continue the conversation. So we have 3 more. First, Alan, no last name. Hand raised.
Yes, thank you. I have just 3 quick points that I want to make. One is that concerns place types. We would like to see a place type that more accurately describes the type of neighborhoods that are adjacent to the educational corridor in Southeast Oak Cliff. Both of the universities that anchor the educational corridor are growing, and one, UNTD, is expected to almost triple the population, the student population, over the next 10 years. So a place type that more accurately reflects the 8 or 9 neighborhoods that are adjacent to the educational corridor would certainly be helpful. And in terms of the existing multifamily projects in particular, some of the new projects, new builds, multifamily that has come up over here in Southeast Oak Cliff had a promise of retail being included in the mixed-use project. We would like to see that promise kept. Often the retail is promised to be built at the very last stage of building the housing. And in some cases, that retail never materializes, it's never built. So we'd like to see the developers be held to that retail promise. That may be one of the only ways that we can bring quality retail into Southeast Oak Cliff. And the last point that I would like to raise concerns residency and industrial adjacency. How is that going to be contained or restrained or eliminated? We have severe adjacency issues in Southeast Oak Cliff. And without going into detail of naming our examples, but the point is, how do we untangle some of these residency industrial issues, given the historical racism and historical length of time that these conditions have existed, and the likelihood that the current landowners of the industrial part of the land is probably not going to agree to downzone. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments and questions, Alan. Yes, we can definitely, I believe we're going out to Southeast Oak Cliff, and definitely can elaborate on the place type for those residential communities that are around Paul Quinn and UNT Dallas. For the retail and the multifamily, that's probably diving into the zoning and the particular clawbacks that you can try to put in there to ensure that what the developer promises is something that actually occurs. And then for the residential and industrial adjacency, that's working through those case-by-case basis, through those different place types to understand, what it is right now versus what we want it to be in the future. Okay, what are those land uses where they are clashing, where they are causing issues, and how do we say no? The new land use that we want in Forward Dallas is going to be something different. Thank you, Alan.
All right, Zach Thompson up next.
Thank you. My question is a property owner on South Fitzhugh in South Dallas. I guess I'm concerned about the infrastructure in the area. I see a lot of development that'll be going into Fair Park first, and that's fine. But the outer area, Fair Park, South Dallas, is still lacking. And so I guess the question on land use is that I'll be curious to see what discussions are going on land use. And then one last piece, I'm a property owner in Elm Thicket, North Park, and we were involved in the rezoning. I hear this concept about downzoning, so I want to make sure I'm clear. No one can dictate to us as legacy homeowners how we should maintain our community. So when I hear downzoning, I'm gonna have to be honest. It sounds like the old Dallas, where you have white developers trying to tell us as African Americans how we should live in our own community. And so I just wanted to hear that, but I'm focused on South Dallas today. But I hear this down zoning, and there was not down zoning. Those of us who were born there, who was pushed into Elm Thicket North Park, deserve to maintain the integrity of our neighborhoods. And I would expect the same as a property owner in South Dallas. So I'm assuming that is there a systematic process going on to move African Americans out of the core of the city of Dallas? Because in the 40s and 50s, we've seen significant number of African Americans living north of the Trinity. Now we're seeing people being pushed or based on economics south and out of the city of Dallas limits. So I just thought I'd add that caveat in there, but I'm focused on South Fitzhugh and South Dallas Fair Park right now.
Thank you, Zach, for your question and your comments. For South Dallas, part of this Forward Dallas, where we say this is going to be this type of place, that helps inform bond packages and infrastructure to say, look, we understand more more housing, more retail is going to go here. We need better sidewalks. We need more water and wastewater. We need those lines replaced. Hopefully that can go into some of those areas in South Dallas as the redevelopment of that area occurs. But it occurs through a process in which the property owners are the drivers of that and are the beneficiaries of that, as opposed to outside folks coming in. Thank you, Zach.
All right, and the last question is from Janie.
Hi, thanks so much for this presentation. Actually, my question kind of piggybacks off of what Alan mentioned earlier, because the Forward Dallas plan seems to kind of capture future land uses, what we want in the future, and talking about how we want to see our communities. But what about the present? And Alan kind of asked my question about what do you do, especially in areas where there's a lot of industrial next to residents. And so with Forward Dallas and these place types, how is this plan going to tackle that? How do you tackle it when residents in an area are adamant about not wanting specific place types that have been there, but are negatively affecting communities? So I just kind of want to get more clarity on, is that already kind of a topic that's brewing as part of this Forward Dallas vision plan for the future, or how is it going to be tackled exactly?
Thank you, Janie, for your question. Yes, it is definitely something that Forward Dallas is looking at. myself, our staff, are very accurately aware or acutely aware of the environmental injustices that are apparent in Dallas, and the Forward Dallas process. You mentioned, it's focusing on the future, but again, the beginning part of it was understanding where we are, recognizing the present, and understanding that you do have residential communities next to industrial communities or industrial uses, and on a case-by-case basis, looking at that and saying, okay, should that continue to exist in this area? If it shouldn't, what should occur in that area moving forward? Should those industrial uses go away and that become more of a residential community, or should it continue to exist as it currently does? And part of that scenario planning that I talked about in the very beginning is, okay, here's what happens when you don't do anything, when you just let the status quo exist. Here's what happens 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. Here's what happens when you make certain changes for that type of place or those land uses. What happens in that community? And based upon those scenarios, we can then work with the community to say, okay, here's if we do nothing. Here's what happens if we do a couple of different things. How does changing certain things address those issues of environmental injustice or racial issues that are currently being experienced in that community or in those communities? Jane, did that answer the question, or at least provide some clarity?
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome. All right. Well, it is just past 1 o'clock. I want to thank everybody for joining us for this presentation about place types in Forward Dallas. As Lauren said, our contact information will be made available. This presentation will be made available. If you have additional questions, if you say, hey, I'd love to have you guys give a presentation over here or to this group, or if you just have further questions about the process, please don't hesitate to reach out. Hopefully we can connect and either answer those questions or provide that clarity.
Yes, and we just put our email address on the chat for those who want to follow up with any questions or even answers to the questions that we answered or asked. Please write down pud@dallas.gov. We'll all get that email and be able to respond to you directly. And another question I just want to touch on too, from starting in December, we'll be going out into certain communities and kind of having this discussion related to future land use and making sure that we're able to gather that input and either update or tweak or get that information to staff in terms of how we want to see your future land vision in Forward Dallas. So there'll be opportunities in person. We'll be making mapping and this presentation available online. And we just want to thank everybody for your time. And again, we'll be available through email and for also coordinating future meetings and other ways of getting your community to provide that feedback for us. So we do get that more collaborative and also comprehensive approach of what you want us to show in this plan. So thank you all so much and looking forward to meeting with you all again.